Welcome to the Passion Week devotion series with Southbrook Church. We're so glad that you've decided to join us as we walk through this amazing week together. I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes the busyness of this season prevents me from really slowing down and reflecting on the events that we're celebrating. And so our heart through this series of devotions is that day by day, we'll revisit the events of this day so many years ago. We'll talk about the significance back then and how they apply to us now. And I hope that you will find these videos helpful. Today is Palm Sunday, and the scriptural accounts of Palm Sunday are found in Matthew 21, Mark 11, Luke 19, and John chapter 12. And I'd encourage you to read each of those four gospel accounts of Palm Sunday. Just notice the different details that the different gospel authors draw out from the events of that day. In most Bibles, each account is going to have a heading that reads something like the triumphal entry. And what's going on there is that just before these events, Jesus has raised Lazarus from the dead, and now he is heading into Jerusalem on the Sunday before the Passover. He's riding a colt, a donkey. And because Jerusalem was filled with crowds of people there to celebrate the upcoming Passover, the crowds come out to meet him. And there is this big celebration that happens. And one of the things that they would do to honor somebody in an important position is they would throw their coats on the ground or even branches of trees, palm trees. And that was their way to honor this celebrity that was coming into Jerusalem. And we read in the accounts that the crowds were shouting, "Hosanna," which means salvation has come. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. There is a lot that we could think about and talk about around the events of Palm Sunday. But for us, for now, I want to draw our attention to what I think are three amazing facets of God's character that we can see through these events. And the first is this: authenticity. God is who he says he is. One way that we know that God is who he says he is through all of the prophecies in the Old Testament scriptures fulfilled in the New Testament. Jesus fulfilled hundreds of prophecies written by many authors over many centuries. And one of those prophecies is fulfilled right here on Palm Sunday. Matthew and John, both in their accounts of Palm Sunday, reflect the fact that Jesus, in riding on a donkey, fulfilled a prophecy from Zechariah chapter 9. So that's the first facet of God's character we see here, authenticity. The second is intentionality. God has a plan. Palm Sunday really marks the beginning of Passion Week, and we think of it as the first day in that series of events that led to Good Friday and eventually Easter Sunday. But this was not the beginning. It really wasn't. In the Gospels, Jesus himself had predicted his death and resurrection on three separate occasions. But even further back than that, right back in the book of Genesis, when the fall happens and Eve is tempted by the serpent and sin first enters the world, God addresses the serpent, Satan. And he has this phrase in Genesis chapter 3 where, in addressing the serpent, he says, "He," referring to Jesus, "will strike your head. You will strike his heel." And it reflects the fact that on Good Friday, Satan would maybe land a blow on Jesus. But in fact, Jesus would actually crush Satan. So way back, right at the beginning of creation, God knew this was going to happen. But even further back than that, before creation, God knew what would happen this week. There's an amazing verse in Revelation chapter 13. We started in Genesis, we end up in Revelation. But there is a phrase in Revelation 13 talking about the Lamb, referring to Jesus, that was slain from the foundation of the world. Meaning that before creation even happened, God knew all along what would happen during this week. There was a plan. God had intentionality. third characteristic of God that we see here is fidelity. God is faithful, no matter what. I think to me, one of the things that is so striking about the events of Palm Sunday is how quickly things change and how different Palm Sunday is from the events that would transpire in the subsequent days. Things changed so quickly. The crowd went from cheering to jeering. But what we see is that even though on Palm Sunday there is this massive celebration happening as Jesus enters Jerusalem, Jesus was not motivated by people's praise. He was motivated by a desire to please his Father, to pursue his purpose. This journey that is ending here on Palm Sunday, in Luke's account, begins in Luke chapter 9. And there, Luke documents that Jesus set his face towards Jerusalem. He set out with intent to be here at this time to walk through these events. And that phrase, set his face, it speaks to steadfastness, to being resolute, to being determined. And so Jesus resolutely pursued God's purpose. It didn't matter whether people were praising him or not. He resolutely pursued God's purpose. And so as you think about Palm Sunday today, as you head into the rest of this Passion Week, think about those characteristics of God. Think about his authenticity, his intentionality, and his fidelity. God is who he says he is. God has a plan. God is faithful, no matter what.